Well, good morning and welcome to Your Longest Life, the podcast about living and working. Today, we're going to be talking about working perhaps to 100 and beyond. The more I read about this thing, people are living longer and longer, and how's that going to impact us in our lives? And today, my guest is Elizabeth Fideler. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning.
How are you?
I am very well, and I hope you are too.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, and I am doing great. I'm just going to read a bit about your background, and then we're going to talk about your new book, which is why I'm excited about. So Elizabeth went to school for administration, planning, and social policy from Harvard University. You're a founding member of the Sloan Research Network on Aging and Work at Boston College. Fideler has written and presented extensively on aspects of the aging workforce. And prior to that, you were a research fellow at the Sloan Center. You conducted research projects on education development. Your current research on writing focuses on older women and men who choose to continue in the paid workforce beyond conventional retirement age. Correct?
Absolutely right.
Now, you've written a few books. Today we're going to talk about Aging, Work, and Retirement, your latest book, but you've also written a book, Men Still at Work, Professionals Over 60, Still on the Job, and Women Still at Work, Professionals Over 60 and Still on the Job. So you've done a lot of research on this.
I have. What got me started was that I had a full-time research job, an educational research job with EDC, Education Development Center, which was a wonderful place to work. And I was very happy there and had no thought of retiring, no plans for retirement. Anyway, when you're on soft money, which was a federal grant to do educational research, when the money goes away, you either get another grant or a contract, or that's it. And all of a sudden, even though I wasn't planning on it, there I was in my then mid-60s, not ready to even say the word retirement.
Yeah.
That was a really tough time. And I was applying for new jobs. And I found that when you're in your mid-60s, when you don't have a job, it can be really tough. It still is today. And I would get to be a finalist, and I found that people were very interested in me and my work, but they could hire someone with half of my experience and half of my salary and so on. It got to be very discouraging. So I turned to what, of course, I knew best, which was research. And my question was, well, what are other women my age doing? That led to the book, Women Still at Work.
Right.
And when that first came out, at the time and even today, and that's about 10 years ago, I found that women 65 and older were the fastest growing cohort in the labor market, not in total numbers, but in the rate of increase.
Okay.
So that caught my attention, and it has continued to this day that not only women, but also older men are staying on the job much longer than anyone expected. They're living longer, they're healthier, right, and they're staying on the job. And we can talk about all the nuances of that, but that's the big picture.
Mm-hmm. And so your new book is called Aging, Work, and Retirement. And this just came out like a month ago, didn't it? It's very new.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations. That's exciting for you.
Thank you. What's a little different about this book is that Rowman and Littlefield is the press, okay, for all three of the books. And they're marketing this one as a textbook for graduate and undergraduate courses in sociology and gerontology, psychology, business management. What have I left out? Social work, because this phenomenon, this trend of older workers, and what are the implications of that? This is important in across all those disciplines, all those fields. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about it, about the idea that people who are graduate students and undergraduates are going to be thinking a little bit more about the trend that we're talking about today.
So your reason for writing the book was your own personal experience. And did you have friends going through the same kind of thing, or?
Well, Yes and no. My own experience kind of propelled me into the area of research. And of course, after I finished the book on older women who were staying
Right.
in the workforce, my family gave me a book party, and the men who came to the book party said, "Well, I'm 72, and I'm still what are we, the chopped liver? So you have to write a book about men."
What about us? Yeah, great.
But what about us? Exactly. So you nailed it. So I did the same type of research because then I was going to make a comparison between men and women, older men and older women. And my focus has always been the reasons people are staying in the workforce. That's what I was trying to dig into.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to put a face to, we could talk about the statistics, but I thought it was important also to put a face to the statistics. Who were these people and why were they doing what I was finding that they were doing? And I did use a research method called snowball sampling.
Okay.
So that if I sent the survey to you, and you had to be at least 60 to do my survey, and you had to be in the paid workforce, much as I love volunteering, and I was on the library board in our community, and I have great respect for volunteers and done it myself, and still do that. But for the purpose of the survey, you had to be in the paid workforce, and you had to be 60. And if I sent the survey to you and you sent it to your brother, if you happen to have a brother, or you sent it to your friend, and then your friend sent it to another friend,
okay.
it snowballs. And it not only could go anywhere in the United States, but actually it also went out of the country as well. So my focus was people 60 and up in the paid workforce and their reasons. And I found that money was not the driving factor. Even though everyone seems to assume, well, you must be working because you need the money and you didn't plan well. And that's true of some people. And what I found when I looked closely at the reasons, it was something that I used an umbrella term. It was something that I called job satisfaction. I heard you say you love your work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You could say, well, that's it. If you hate your boss and hate your colleagues and hate the work and whatever, you're probably not going to stay on that job, in that job, or working at all. But if you love your work and you're getting what I call job satisfaction, which we can call having a sense of purpose, we can call finding meaning in your work. There are different interpretations of it. But it comes down to this idea of job satisfaction. And some people admitted that, I'm working because I need the structure, or I want to get out of the house in the morning. I need something to wake up and do. There are a lot of variations, and there are people who are, paying off a mortgage, and there are people who are helping grandchildren or children with college tuition or graduate school tuition. There are many responsibilities, a lot of family issues for everyone. A lot of people today are talking about caregiving because with many more people living longer, there's a lot of caregiving going on.
That's huge.
That's a huge area. So there can be a lot of reasons, but mostly it boiled down to what I called loving your work and finding satisfaction in what you're doing. I want to say also that there were gender differences. And when older women who perhaps haven't put in as many years in whatever the work is that they're doing, they may find themselves looking at, in this country, what we call Social Security. That's far less than what a man would be entitled to when he claims his benefits. And especially if you've been laid off and there have been periods of being unemployed, that of course affects the Social Security. So women are, let's just sum it up and say that women are often in a lesser or more vulnerable financial position as they age than men are. And that does come up.
Now that would come up also because women are living longer than men. It's going
That's
to be
right.
even more
Mm-hmm.
of an issue. Since we're all going to live longer, we're all not going to live longer together, are we?
Well, this book, because of what you're saying, and because of the new, I think it's fairly new attention to these phenomena of longer, better health and longer life. People who are younger, in their 40s, let's say, or 50s, would be very wise to be thinking ahead,
Mm-hmm.
to consider a lot of the things we're talking about today. They may think, oh, that's not me, that's way in the future. But after all, everyone is aging, and there are lessons to be learned from what people are experiencing now. And I assume you're going to ask me about the pandemic, because that, of course, has thrown everything. We can talk about that whenever you want, but that's thrown everything
Okay.
into a bit of confusion.
Well, here's a question. What is the main, in your research, what's the main perception that people have of older workers? Is there one sort of, they think these older workers are they taking up space in the system? We can talk about that too. The people that are 20 years, 25 years behind them, they're living longer or they're working longer. That's great, but now they're not leaving room for the next generation to work. You've heard that. I've heard that. What did
Are they
your research
plugging up
talk
the
about that?
pipeline? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. There are what are called myths about older workers, or negative stereotypes. And some of them include, oh, heck, they're just hanging on and they're going to be leaving anyway. So why bother to invest in professional development or training or retraining if people are just going to be leaving? So that's a negative. That can be a barrier to somebody who wants to learn something new, say about technology or anything else. There are other negative stereotypes that involve, oh, well, they're going to be in poor health and it's going to cost the company more if blah, blah, blah. So there's that. There can be stereotypes held by younger workers about older workers and by human resource professionals. The human resource managers that can also hold negative stereotypes about older workers. But actually, there's a lot of talk these days about age-friendly workplaces. And people's heads are being turned by the idea of greater flexibility as far as the location. Where are you working? Can you work from home? Can you work remotely? Do you have to be in Kansas to work for a company that happens to be based in Kansas? No, you could be any place in the world with technology today. So place and time, as long as you get your work done, and if you like to work between 4 a.m. and 9 a.m. and then go to the gym, what difference does it make? As long as you get the work done, right? So there's more flexibility. This is benefiting people of all ages, not just older workers. But to come back to your question, the stereotypes are being debunked because there are a lot of positive stereotypes that are replacing them. And that includes older workers having the experience, the wisdom, the institutional knowledge. Contrary to one negative, which is that, oh, well, they couldn't possibly know how to use a computer. That's not true today anymore. No. Of course, there are exceptions, but lots of people are working with Zoom and making it all work. So there's great loyalty to the firm. Whatever, I'm trying to think of all the positive ones, reliability, etc. Contrary to the idea that older people are less healthy, in fact, they are less days of absenteeism. So all of that can be can be subsumed under the idea of ageism or age discrimination.
Ageism.
Yeah,
So,
ageism or
so
bias.
in your mind, ageism is perhaps going down then?
It's being called out more.
Okay.
It's being recognized more for what it is. And it's not so easy to get away with it anymore. Now, since 1967, there's been an act in the US, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, ADEA.
Mm-hmm.
It's been renewed and revised over the years. It's been very hard to prove age bias, whether it's in the recruitment language or the hiring process or the professional development side of things, or retention, promotion, things like that. It's very hard to prove that you've been passed over or left out or shoved out the door because of age. But the law is there. It's just very hard to have it work in one's favor. So ageism is getting a lot more attention. It's still the AARP, you know what that is?
Yes, I do.
AARP has done research on age discrimination, and most people say if they themselves haven't experienced it, they know a lot of people who have.
Right. What would be the top workplace issues that someone would face today working longer? Would there be the top 2 or 3 things they'd need to address or think about? Like if I'm 65 and I've decided I'm going to keep working.
Well, you'd have to start with your skills, making sure your skills are up to speed, up to date. And that's not just in terms of computer technologies, but everything, you know, if you're a surgeon, obviously, or if you're an airplane pilot, there are a lot of areas where you have to make sure your skills are up to speed. And there might be in fewer and fewer industries, there are mandatory retirement laws still in place, like airplane pilots and firefighters and so on. But some law firms, I think, are making people retire before they're ready. But in higher education, you can stay on for a long time, almost as long as you want. So I lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. That's okay. What do you find? Do you find people that maybe, okay, they've hit a wall where they currently work, they've been there and they can't stay for whatever reason. So self-employment then, starting a new business. Did your research come up with people thinking, geez, I've always wanted to do this, so I'm going to take that up?
The common thinking about self-employment or entrepreneurship, they're not exactly the same thing. You can be self-employed without being a great entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is making a breakthrough in some way, innovating in some way. You might just be running your own shop that maybe your father or mother ran, and that doesn't make you an entrepreneur, but you are self-employed. Our grown children are self-employed. There's a lot of it out there. The assumption is that it's all these bright young people who are doing all the innovation, but it turns out it's people in their 50s and 60s who are the entrepreneurs in the greatest numbers, and when they start something new, they're persisting and they're succeeding more than any other age group, which is quite fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Yeah,
let's talk about that more. Is that just their determination? They can see the end of the runway. I got to make this work. What do you think it is?
I think that they start off with not just the social capital, but I think they have some cushion, financial cushion, that helps them to weather. It can be a very risky thing to do, to go off on your own.
Yes, it is.
And it can be there can be a lot of frustrations and aggravations and so on. Yeah. So I think it's a combination of having not just the determination and the bright ideas and the energy, because you have to have a certain amount of stamina, but maybe the financial wherewithal enough to carry you through those first few years until you launch whatever you really feel like you've launched whatever it is that you're doing. Backing up to what you asked me before, I use the term age-friendly workplace. I think older people not only need to keep their skills up to speed, but I wanted to add that sometimes there can be friction with younger workers, and it's important that we now have many more places that are multi-generational. Sometimes as many as 5 different generations in the same workforce.
Yes.
So from the 20-year-old up to the 83-year-old or whatever. That's a challenge. So the intergenerational workforce is a new challenge for everybody. And ageism doesn't only affect on the older end of the spectrum. There are also stereotypes about younger workers.
The other way.
Yeah, the other way. And there's supposedly their sense of entitlement. And
what did your research find about different education levels? Someone who's a lawyer that wants to keep working versus someone who's been in the service industry and they have to keep working longer, but for less money. It's more physically demanding. They're on their feet all day as opposed to working in an office. Did you find?
You answered your own question. Okay. Education and health together make all the difference. Education, the people who are the best educated, the people who have the most advanced education and highest skill levels seem to be faring better than someone with low levels of education, low skills, low wage jobs. Physically demanding jobs, as one gets to be in 60s, 70s, or 80s, become more troublesome. So you don't find the people who are still working, and the people in my research, they're not doing physically demanding jobs. Although I have one fellow who had been a hospital administrator. He actually was top level, senior level hospital administrator. And when there was a turnover and we won't go into all the issues around what happened at the hospital, he decided to work not only with his wife in her business, but for his wife, which was an interesting situation. It was her business, and he's still doing that. He's in his 80s, and he and she they restore monuments and gravestones. Yes. Wow. And that turns out, I mean, it's very unexpected. And so that's a physically demanding job for him. And he has also younger men who help him out.
Yep.
But he's still doing that. And there are a lot of historic cemeteries all over the country where there's a need to restore the headstones and the monuments and whatever, and that's their business. It's not something that you would have heard about, but that's an example. I have another fellow who was also in what's called real estate appraisal. That's something you're probably familiar with.
I am.
And he was hugely successful in that business. And when he retired, he became a dog massager.
Really?
And a mediator. And sometimes what he's mediating has to do with dog ownership. But anyway, he's got two completely different businesses going, and he's happy as a clam. People often have dreams, and what Nancy Schlossberg in your earlier podcast called, finding your purpose, finding your passion. Sometimes, and I found this was true with women, when I came out of college, the jobs for women tended to be teaching, social work, nursing, secretarial work. And you've heard about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and
Yes.
with her, and Sandra Day O'Connor, and how hard it was even with their wonderful law degrees to have anyone take them seriously and give them jobs. So a lot of the women in my research would tell me that, well, yes, I was a teacher, or I was a social worker, or I was whatever, but what I always wanted to do was X. And then I finally got to do it. So why would I give that up? And that's the drive I heard from a lot of the women, that when they finally succeeded in the field that was their passion and their purpose,
Right.
and they were at the peak of their careers in their 70s and early 80s, why would they give that up? And the men would tell me that more than the women, but the men would tell me, well, I want to make sure that whatever the field is, that we keep our standards up. And so I'm going to mentor these younger early career people to help them be the kind of doctor or lawyer or whatever that I'd like them to be, because I believe, this is such an important field that I've dedicated myself to all these years.
Now, we've just started I don't think it's just recently, but a mentor program. You mentioned the mentor program.
Yeah.
And I think that's certainly going to be something that people can look back and think, hey, how do I contribute still, and still be a vital part of the job? Because every job does have different nuances to it, doesn't it? There's one thing about the school part, but then there's actually, the day-to-day, how do I massage all this so that it turns into a career, both the personal side and my business side. I think a mentor thing is an exciting opportunity for people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that nobody teaches you that in graduate school or trade school or wherever you go. There's a lot that you learn from the people who are one or two or five steps ahead of you.
So hard skills and soft skills, right?
Yes.
Soft skills.
Exactly. One of the things that Nancy Schlossberg talked about that I thought we could piggyback on was she used the word transitions a lot. Mm-hmm. She was talking a lot about the psychological transitions people make as they get older. And I think that's a very apt word when you're thinking about working versus retirement, because what the old view, the traditional view of retirement seemed to be exiting the workforce, going cold turkey, mm-hmm. and that was permanent. It was a permanent exit, and one day you were working and the next day you were retired, and that was it. It's like falling off a cliff for some people. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always work very well. There are people who get bored in retirement and who aren't going to fill their lives with playing golf or sitting in the rocking chair. Again, those are stereotypes, but we have a new term today that's called unretirement. So there are people who retired, it didn't work out for them, and they're coming back to the workforce. And that's a whole new trend. We have people who are doing what's called phased retirement. Again, it's a type of transition with what's called a bridge job, bridge employment. So whatever your career job was for mm-hmm. many years, you might continue doing it, but on a more part-time basis with maybe reduced responsibilities, probably for a lower salary. And you may bridge from the career job into that new phase and then eventually retire. So there are it's a process. Instead of the cold turkey mm-hmm. permanent exit, there's much more of an emphasis on process and transition. And there are a lot of people out there who will coach you through that kind of transition. I read in the New York Times just yesterday about a woman this was in the business section joining and now working for an older crowd. And this woman has, I thought you'd enjoy this, because this
Uh-huh.
woman is, what she does kind of resonates with what you do and what you're
Oh,
thinking about. Well, I don't know, she's in, I don't know, Maryland or something, and she was a nurse. And then she realized, with all these older people trying to figure out what's next and what does it look like, whether they're single or married or downsizing, or, you know,
mhm.
a lot of change. There's a lot going on, and it can be, a lot of people need some coaching or some support as they go through the transitional processes.
Right.
So that woman actually is turned herself into one of those kinds of coaches.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah. And I
Oh, isn't
belong
that
to
great?
a group called the Life Planning Network. And most of those people are life coaches, and they also will do that kind of work. Some people need help with their nutrition as they get older. Some people need help with their physical
Mhm.
fitness as they get older. So there are coaches for everything.
There is, isn't there? Yeah, there sure are. Okay, I've got one more question here. If let's just bring this together and say, after listening to this, okay, Elizabeth, this is great. I am going to be working longer. What are the three things, maybe the top three things I should be doing to make sure that this is successful next 10 years? If I'm 65, I want to do it to 75. Are there three things you would recommend people would start working on?
Well, if you haven't already started thinking about your health, you better start there. So health really comes
Right.
first. Family issues, you probably want to get squared away with your family, um, and your finance. I guess finances would be the third area.
Mm-hmm.
Though, you know, again, those are the big topics. And
What about as it relates directly to work? Like if I'm in a job
yeah,
and they've said, hey, and you can stay another 10 years if you want, that's great, but are there certain things in my job I should be thinking, I need to get more computer literate. I need to start getting better interaction with those 30 years younger than me. How do I, would that be something to think about?
I I don't know that you would suddenly wake up one day and say, I need to start improving my
Mm-hmm.
computer skills or my interpersonal skills, because if you haven't had them up till now, you're
Fair enough.
probably not in very
Might be
good.
a tall task. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you may want to talk to the human resources professional, manager, whoever. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, unless you're self-employed. I mean, we're talking
Yep.
about people who work for big companies where
Right.
there is an HR
Mm-hmm.
specialist, and you might want to know what programs and policies are in place within your company, so that if you decided to, a lot of people want to continue full time, but if you decided to cut back on your time, or if you wanted to work remotely,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, if your circumstances changed and you became a caregiver, does your company have a policy and a program in place that, a lot of companies got into understand, they began to understand that they needed to provide what we'll call wellness programs, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
even help pay for gym membership, for example, because they made the connection between keeping their employees healthy and productivity.
Right.
That's like duh, but they they haven't done as well with the um, the other aspects that have to do with financial planning and so on. People used to be able to get a big pension
Yes.
if they stayed a long time on the job, and they were paying in and the company was paying in. But that arrangement, that
Yeah.
defined benefit, has gone away in most cases.
Yes.
And there's a lot more emphasis now on the individual providing his or her own, you know, your own 401k.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that there's a financial piece to this that you obviously need to think about, as well as I said before, the health factor. Do you have, can you expect to be healthy for the next 10 years, as well as
Mm-hmm.
financially secure?
Oh, this has been great. I know we're out of time. I sure appreciate our interview today, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This
I'm delighted to talk about my favorite topic.
This has been Elizabeth Fideler, and her new book is called Aging, Work, and Retirement. Elizabeth, where can we find the book now?
Well, if you can get it from Amazon.
Okay.
That's the easiest for most people. You can go to the press has a website. It's ROWMAN, Roman.com.
Okay.
And if you go to Roman.com, you can put my name in, which is spelled with a capital Fideler, Fideler. And then the books will come up and you can order from there.
Okay, pop. Well, that sounds great. Well, thank you again, Elizabeth. I appreciate that. And enjoy your day.
Thank you so much, Ian.
Okay.
Enjoy it too.
Bye-bye.